Ron, I've been a fan of yours for quite some time. You're a popular man. 12 best-selling books. That's a lot of books. That's almost more books than I've read. But you have a lot of fans out there, from very successful comedians like myself to folks in the NFL to senators. Sort of what you speak to goes across many aisles, if you will. And I will say I've taken a lot from some of the ideas you have. I will also say that you talk about philosophy and it helps me work through life, and then a byproduct is that I go home and I tell my wife how she should work through life.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And before we get started, I'm wondering if it's possible for you to apologize to my wife for me.
People ask my wife what it's like living with a Stoic philosopher, and she usually answers, I don't know.
That feels Socratic, but
Yes.
Mostly maybe it's just passive-aggressive?
Yes. Yeah. One of us writes about it, and then the other is sort of naturally it.
It kind of lives it.
Yes.
For those who don't know a Stoic philosopher, what are the tenets of Stoicism?
Stoicism, if I had to summarize it in one sentence, I would say it's this idea that we don't control what happens to us in life, but we control how we respond to what happens in life. And the Stoics say that basically every situation, big ones, small ones, ones you wanted, ones you didn't want, it's all an opportunity to respond with these 4 virtues. Mm-hmm. The virtues are courage, discipline, justice, and wisdom. So the idea is that that is what life is asking from you, one or all of those virtues in some kind of a combination. That's what it's demanding of you. And what's cool about the Stoics is, like, I think when people hear philosopher, they think like, a tweed jacket or an old white guy in a toga or whatever.
Sure.
But the Stoics were philosophers. They were thinkers, but they were also doers. The most well-known Stoic is Marcus Aurelius, who's the emperor of Rome, the philosopher king. But there were Stoics who were slaves, who were soldiers, who were artists. There were men and women. They were people trying to do what we're all trying to do, which is make sense of the crazy world that we live in.
Right. But this image of them,
Yes.
Marcus Aurelius, doesn't seem like the most modern person that people are drawn to. Why do you think there's, don't get me wrong, why do you think there's resonance today?
Yeah,
We have a hard time. We're kicking Rosa Parks out of libraries in Florida. So it feels like maybe the fact that it's a white guy from back in the day makes it easier in places like Florida. But I think we have a hard time with grappling with historic ideas. These feel archaic. Why are they resonant?
I actually think that life hasn't changed that much, good and bad, right? Obviously, we made all sorts of progress in 2,000 years, and at the same time, life is still life. Like in one passage in Meditations, Marcus Aurelius is like, when you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning and you go, but it's so much warmer here under the covers. He goes, but is this what you were put here to do, to stay under the covers and be warm? He says, no, you have a purpose. You should help people. You should make a positive difference in the world. You should do what you're uniquely suited to do. So even 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man in the world was like, I don't want to get up. It's too early. Mm-hmm. And that's because he was a person. And Marcus also lived through a pandemic. He lived through social unrest. There was an insurrection and a coup, right? Some of this might be sounding familiar. Mm-hmm.
At least the laziness does.
Yes. Life is life. People are people. And for better or for worse, that's going to always stay the same.
It feels like what is active? I mean, there's been philosophy for at least 20 years. We'll fact check that, but I know it's been around a while. There's many tenets of philosophy. It feels like an element of Stoicism is that it feels actionable around your emotions. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's not this thing that you think about, it's this thing you're supposed to do, right? So some of the Stoics, the great Stoics, never wrote anything down. They were considered Stoics because of how they lived. It was the idea of deeds, not words. So yes, I struggle with it in my own life, but I try to actually put the ideas into practice. They're not philosophy. It's a shame if we think of philosophy as a series of thought exercises, right? How do we know if we're living in a computer simulation, right? Or is there such a thing as right and wrong? Like, we can use it to answer these abstract, impractical questions, or we can use it as a way to make things impossibly complicated. Or we can use it to really simplify things and go, who am I? What am I supposed to do? How do I make the best out of this complicated, messy situation? That's what I think philosophy is. And it's a shame that so few people have access to it, or that it's been made accessible to them in a way that would help them make better decisions and be better people.
All right, help me through this then.
Okay.
All right, so real life philosophy. I'm with my son at a store, and he throws a shit fit. And is screaming and doesn't want to leave, and I'm embarrassed, I'm exhausted. How do I use philosophy in a moment like that?
Well, I think what we do is we don't do what the guy on the plane did, which is throw our own tantrum in response. Right? So first off,
he was more like a Nietzsche guy?
Yes, yeah. I don't know where he studied, but the idea is we only control ourselves, right? So our kid's throwing a tantrum, and we have to say, okay, I'm not going to make this situation worse by freaking out. I'm also going to say I'm going to strip out the part of me from my own upbringing, from society, that says this is a reflection on me as a person, right? That it's reflecting that I'm a failure, I'm embarrassing myself, everyone's looking at me. Everyone who has kids knows exactly what's happening, and they're too busy with their own life to even think about you for the most part. And then I think another part of it is understanding why they're feeling that way, right? Which is, hey, they don't want to be doing this, right? Life is hard. It's hard to be a 2-year-old, right? And when we understand that people are dealing with their own crap, right? It gives us empathy and passion and compassion and patience for those people. And so if you can try to think, well, why do they think this is a good way to respond? What are they trying to get? How do I resolve the situation, as opposed to solving it with force, solving it with, rushing out of the situation, or just having a meltdown because the whole thing is overwhelming to you?
Now, we're regulating emotions here using Stoicism, but are we just creating robots? Like, is this Elon Musk territory here?
No. Stoicism is not about making you a better sociopath.
Okay.
It's not.
Which one is that? What book is that? Do you know?
Yeah.
Is that Kierkegaard?
I think Andrew Tate has some videos
Andrew
about
Tate. It's an Andrew. Okay. Good. Okay.
The idea is not that you suppress the emotions. It's that you don't be overwhelmed by the situations and make decisions from those emotions, right? So there's a difference between being angry, right, and then doing something out of anger. And I think this is an important distinction that we can miss in the moment. Someone did something that's upsetting, that's annoying, that caught you off guard. You're going to have your immediate reaction, but there's a lot of space between that and hitting send on the email that you wrote, dressing them down, right? Or you're getting mad at your kid because they're having the meltdown, and you can stop yourself part of the way through because you're older, because you've been, you know what this looks like. And so the idea is have the emotions, process the emotions, try not to make bad decisions from those emotions, and that we have power along this spectrum.
Now, there's a criticism of Stoicism too about, I think what I appreciate with some of this is the idea that it takes response and it breaks it down in little bits and pieces. And I know this main tenet that, like, being aware of what you can control and what you cannot, and being able to let go of the things you cannot control. I think a criticism of Stoicism is, if you look at, is it a philosophy that comes from a place of privilege?
Sure.
For people that are in situations where even institutional situations, you look at things like racism, activism movements, where the situation that they cannot control is one that is inherently oppressive. Is Stoicism teaching you how to accept those things and not push back? Is there inherent privilege in there?
It's hard to get more privilege than the Emperor of Rome, right? But the philosopher that influences Marcus Aurelius more than any other philosopher who he quotes in his writings all the time is this guy named Epictetus, who is a slave. The exact opposite of Marcus. You have extreme power and you have extreme powerlessness. And yet, they're all human beings. They're all dealing with the hand that life deals us, and they're trying to make the best of it and trying to have the most impact that they can in the world despite and because of that, right? So the Stoics occupy a wide range of positions in society, but most of all, the Stoics are active in public life. In fact, this is the big distinction. People have heard of the word Epicurean or the Epicureans. The Epicureans sort of retreat from public life. They study philosophy and they go, let's just hang out in this cool garden, we'll drink, we'll have fun, we'll enjoy life, we'll not be disturbed by things, we'll do our own thing. Well, the Stoics say, but if you do that, who does that seed the field to? Like you were saying in your thing, it seeds it to the worst people. And the Stoics' idea is that unless something prevents them, they will get involved in public life. They will try to contribute. They will try to make a positive difference. And this is why the Stoics were influential to the founders, in the Renaissance. All throughout history, the Stoics have been involved in social movements and positive change making because yes, there's a lot we don't control, but we do control what we do, right? We control whether we vote, whether we go out to a protest, whether we speak out about something, right? So courage is one of the virtues, justice is another virtue, discipline is a virtue, and then wisdom is a virtue. All of these, I think, propel us into being informed and then being active in the world.
How do we utilize something like this? So I go on the road, I talk to a lot of folks, and I get into infuriating conversations more often than not.
Yeah.
People ask me, how do you deal with something like that? And I do go to philosophy. I go to bourbon as well. A hell of a philosophy. I don't know if you know the philosopher Booker's. He's great. Macallan is a great one, a Scottish philosopher. He's great. But I do find elements of like, again, controlling your response and your temper, and also empathy help me get out of things like that.
Yeah.
People also, I talk to a lot of people who are really frustrated with what's going on.
Yeah.
Both sides of the aisle, they're scary times. People turn to God. I think less and less people are turning to God. Like, what do you say and what can people find in philosophy, in Stoic philosophy, that can help them, that can provide a balm to days where you wonder just how long we're going to be able to fight this battle, whether it's climate change, whether it's democracy, whether it's just getting up in the morning?
Yeah, philosophy at its best is what they call the guide to the good life, to human flourishing, not just to happiness, but productivity and purpose and meaning, and being able to endure suffering and pain and loss as we all have to go through in life. But I think if we can see philosophy as something we lean on, something that gives us counsel, that's really helpful. Not as this thing that only people in universities do, but that it's like there for all of us. I think one of the problems is as those other systems have fallen away, whether people are turning away from the church, or they're disillusioned with higher education, or they're disillusioned with the media, like where do they go? They go to random stuff on the internet, and a lot of those people are grifters, or they're trying to weaponize those feelings or those doubts or those emotions of those people. And so, people end up down these dead ends, and we can pity them, but also understand that, like, that's not a good way to go.
How do you? I mean, because you're all over the internet. You have newsletters. You put on Instagram videos all the time. I think you've taken something that seems to live in libraries, in dusty back rooms, and you brought it to people's phones. How do you balance using a medium that has zero depth and is destroying our conversations, but also is the way in which you can talk to kids in 20-second snippets?
I do think it's important that we go to people where they are, right? And take what we think is important, what needs to be said, and find out how to, in the same way that I don't speak Latin or Greek, I read the translations of those texts. We have to figure out how to translate these ideas that we want kids to understand, that we want young people to understand, that we need sort of permeating through our culture. We have to figure out how to translate those into the different mediums where people get their information. And so I love hearing that someone discovered me on YouTube or on Instagram, and then they're like, and then I read your books. Because that's the medium.
What you get paid.
Yes.
Yes.
But
I get it.
That's the medium that human beings have been learning about big ideas for a really long time, right? Books are I think, one of the best mediums to really meditate on something or think about something over a long period of time, right? As opposed to something that's bite-sized. And so I think it's important that we drive people towards books and reading and big ideas and things that are not always of the moment.
I like it. I don't think that's articulated enough, to use social media as a conduit to something that has more depth.
Yeah.
We talked about Andrew Tate on this show, and I Am a Father. You have a book, The Daily Dad, that is coming out. How do you use these things to be a better dad, to create better humans, to make this world a better place?
Yeah, first off, I mean, we have to model this stuff. The Stoics.
What?
Yeah, so the hardest part.
Shit.
Epictetus says, don't talk about your philosophy, embody it, right? My kids aren't going to read my
books.
books.
A real fun one to hang out with.
They're never going to read the books, right? So what matters is, do I live the books at my house, right? And how do we model the things we want our kids to be? And I think politically and culturally, that's a big thing a lot of people my age are dealing with, is how do you respond to the fact that your parents apparently didn't believe a lot of the things they grew up talking to you about, because they're willing to throw their vote to a carnival barker, because they want to win elections, right? Like, how do you deal with that? It's not even a hypocrisy, but it's it's a sort of, it's an insincerity, I guess, right? And so what really matters is, do we model the things and do we show that we're sincere and we really like put value, we put stock in the things that we pay lip service to.
Do you feel there's like a parenting crisis in America?
Well, I think people are struggling with the fact that their parents are struggling, whether it's, they get sucked down some internet rabbit hole, or they're having to work longer than they thought. I do think there is a problem. There's a problem in every generation, but it's not just the millennials and the young people that are struggling. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a joke I heard that all the things that my parents warned us about, that warned us was going to happen to us on the internet, it happened to them.
Yeah. Yeah. A question to a healthy philosophical diet. Obviously, you talk a lot about Stoicism, but for people who are interested, myself included, one, they should go towards your books. They should go to the ideas of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, things of that nature. But also, is it healthy to indulge in other great philosophers? Do you find yourself having to be defined by one particular philosophy? No,
we should read widely. We should put anything to use that's good for us. One of the Stoics, Seneca, he says, read like a spy in the enemy's camp, right? He says, I'll quote a bad author if the line is good, right? So it doesn't matter who said it. What matters is it true, and does it help you get better at being a parent, a person, a professional, whatever it is? Is it of use? That's what matters. If you had to replace a philosophy quote, if you had to replace live, laugh, love, one of my faves. One of my faves. What should if I take that down from my living room? You're looking for a sign at Home Goods.
I need a nice sign at home. What should I look at every day? Marcus
opens book 2 of Meditations with a thought. He says, today the people you will meet will be jealous and stupid and annoying and obnoxious and mean. Right? He goes on. He's preparing for the day ahead, right? And so some people think this is depressive Stoicism at its best. But then he goes, but you can't hate them and you can't let them implicate you in ugliness. He says, because we're meant to work together. We're like 2 rows of teeth or 2 hands, and that we're all part of this large thing together, and that some people are fulfilling their role by being the kind of people that you have to interview, and then the rest of us are doing the best we can, and that is life. I love it, and that is life. Ryan Holiday, everybody.